Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin with a simple truthing. If success is a ladder, failure is every step we climb on that ladder. Nobody has ever reached the top without slipping, stumbling, and sometimes even falling flat on the ground. Yet, those falls are not meant to break us. They are meant to shape us. Think about a child learning to walk. The child falls again and again, yet we never say, "Oh, poor baby, walking is not for you." Instead, we smile, encourage, and wait until that little one learns to take confident steps. God. Isn't it strange that when we grow older, we stop treating ourselves with the same patience? We fail once or twice and immediately conclude, maybe I am not good enough. Failures are not proof that you are weak. They are proof that you are trying. And only those who try fail. A person who never fails, either doing nothing or playing too safe. Failure teaches us lessons that success never can. Success makes us celebrate, but failure makes us think. It whispers, change your strategy, God. Improve your approach. Strengthen your character. And when we listen, we grow. Great inventors, 6,000 God, leaders, and dreamers failed countless times before they created something extraordinary. For 16 hours in God, what set them apart was not their perfection, but their persistence. They turned failure into fuel. They converted obstacles into opportunities. So, my friends, the next time you fail, don't sit down in despair. Smile and say, "Thank you for the lesson." Because life is not about avoiding failure. It's about rising higher every time you fall. When we talk about success, most people imagine it as a shining destination, a mountain peak where everything is perfect, and life suddenly feels complete. But the truth is, success is not a straight highway where you simply start your journey and reach the finish line without obstacles. Success is more like a winding road filled with bumps, turns, and sometimes even dead ends. And on this road, failure is not a detour away from success. It is an essential part of the very path that takes us there. The biggest mistake we often make is thinking that success and failure are opposites, as if failing means we are moving away from our dreams. In reality, each failure is like a signboard pointing us toward the right direction, shaping our understanding of what works and what doesn't. Consider the process of inventing something new. History is filled with stories of great minds who faced repeated failures before they created something revolutionary. And God, when an inventor tests an idea and it doesn't work, it doesn't mean the journey is over. God. It simply means one more way has been discovered that doesn't lead to the desired result. Every unsuccessful attempt brings them a step closer to success because it eliminates possibilities and clears the way for what might work. Failure, then, is not an obstacle to success. It is the foundation on which success stands. Without those failures, ours and God, the final breakthrough would not even exist. Think about learning any skill in life. Whether it's playing a musical instrument, mastering a sport, or building a career. Nobody becomes an expert on the first attempt. The musician plays wrong notes countless times. The athlete misses many shots. And the professional faces setbacks before achieving stability. 16 hours and God. Each of these failures may feel discouraging in the moment, but they are not proof of inability. They are proof of progress. Every mistake refines technique, every error sharpens focus, and every fall builds resilience. Over time, those failures accumulate into wisdom and strength, leading to success that feels well-earned and deeply meaningful. If we treat failure as the opposite of success, we risk giving up too early. Imagine someone who tries once, fails, and says, "This is not for me." That person walks away believing failure has ended their story, ours and God. But if the same person understood that failure is actually part of the success story, they would see it differently, ours and God. They would recognize that failure is like a teacher giving valuable lessons that success itself cannot teach. Success often makes us celebrate and relax, but failure forces us to reflect, adapt, and grow. Without those lessons, success would be shallow and temporary. The journey of life is full of contrasts, and failure is one of the most powerful contrasts to success. It deepens our appreciation for achievement. When we finally reach a goal after failing multiple times, the joy of that victory is richer because of the struggles endured along the way. Failure adds weight to success, giving it meaning far beyond the outcome itself. And God. That is why it is not the opposite of success. It is the hidden ingredient that makes success truly valuable. So, whenever we fail, we must remind ourselves that we are still on the path. The story isn't over. Every failure is simply another chapter in the book of success. Instead of seeing it as an enemy, we must embrace it as a companion, one that travels with us, challenges us, and prepares us for the greatness ahead. And God. When we look at a child taking their first steps, there is something incredibly beautiful in that moment. The child wobbles, stumbles, falls, and yet stands up again with determination. Not once do we say to the child, "Maybe walking is not for you." Instead, we cheer, we encourage God, and we patiently wait for the day when those steps become steady. And God. This simple phase of life carries a profound lesson for all of us. Growth is always accompanied by falling, and every stumble is a part of the process. But as adults, we often forget this truth. The same patience we show to a child, we fail to show ourselves. One failure, one rejection, or one mistake, and we start doubting our abilities. We begin to think, maybe this is not for me. Maybe I am not good enough. Why do we treat ourselves so harshly? A child who falls is not labeled a failure, because everyone understands that falling is natural while learning to walk. 16 hours and God. Then why should we consider ourselves failures when we stumble while learning the steps of life, career, or relationships? Those who succeed are not the ones who never fall. 16 hours and God, they are the ones who refuse to stay on the ground after falling. Falling is not the end. Refusing to rise again is what truly ends the journey. Patience is the key. Just as a child takes days, weeks, or even months before walking confidently, we too must allow ourselves the time to grow into our dreams. No great achievement comes overnight. Every skill requires repetition. Every career demands perseverance. And every dream tests our resilience. In these times, we need to be gentle with ourselves. Too often, we carry impatience, wanting quick results and instant success. But the reality is that progress is gradual. It requires us to stumble, adjust, and try again with persistence. Falling, in fact, is not a setback. It is practice. A child's muscles strengthen with every attempt, even when they collapse to the ground. In the same way, our inner strength, our mindset, and our abilities grow stronger with every stumble. Each mistake adds to our experience, and each failure prepares us to rise with greater stability. The falls are not wasted moments. They are hidden training sessions that life gives us to build resilience. When we look back at our lives, the US for 16 hours and God, we often realize that the things we once thought were failures were actually lessons that shaped us into who we are today. The exams we didn't pass, the jobs we didn't get, 16 hours in God, the relationships that didn't work out. Each of those stumbles taught us patience, humility, and perseverance. Without those falls, we would not have developed the wisdom we now carry. So, the next time we stumble in life, let us remember the image of that little child. Let us smile at our mistakes the way we smile at theirs. Let us encourage ourselves the way we encourage them. Falling doesn't mean failure. It means growth in progress. Patience with ourselves is not a weakness. It is a strength that allows us to rise again and again until walking becomes running, and running leads us toward the destination of our dreams. Failure is often painted as something shameful, something to hide from others, 16 hours in God. But if we really think about it, failure is actually the clearest sign that we dared to try. 16 hours in God, a person who has never failed is not someone extraordinary most of the time. It simply means they never stepped out of their comfort zone. To fail, you must first attempt. To stumble, you must first walk. And to face rejection, you must first put yourself out there. In other words, failure is not evidence of weakness. It is evidence of courage. Imagine an archer who never shoots an arrow. Will that archer ever miss the target? Of course not. But neither will he ever hit the bullseye. The only way to miss is to shoot, and the only way to shoot is to try. Similarly in life, God, the only way to fail is to put in effort, to take risks, and to pursue something meaningful. Those 16 hours in God, those who do never fail, but they also never grow. They live safely but remain stagnant. God, while those who try and fail are constantly evolving into better, stronger, and wiser versions of themselves. This is why failure should be worn as a badge of honor. God. It proves that we were brave enough to act while others stood still. Every attempt we make, whether successful or not, adds to our journey. It is better to fail after trying than to live with the regret of never trying at all. Regret is heavier than failure because regret comes from not knowing what could have been, while failure gives us lessons, clarity, and the chance to try again. Think about inventors, entrepreneurs, or creators. Every innovation we enjoy today exists because someone was willing to try and fail. The light bulb, for example, was not invented on the first attempt. It was the result of countless trials, each failure being proof of effort and progress. Without those so-called failures, success would not have been possible. In the US for 16 hours and God. We celebrate the invention but forget that the failures behind it were equally significant. In our personal lives and God, too, failure tells us that we are alive, that we are moving, that we are growing. The student who fails an exam at least had the courage to appear for it. Ours and God. The athlete who loses a match at least had the courage to compete. The entrepreneur whose idea collapses at least had the courage to dream and take action. These failures, while painful, are far more valuable than never daring to try at all. Each failure says, God, you had the courage to put effort into something meaningful. If we change our perspective and start seeing failure this way, it loses its power to discourage us. Instead of saying, I failed, I am not good enough, we can say, I failed, which means I tried, and that itself is progress. Every attempt adds to our strength, and every effort brings us closer to success, even if the results are not immediate. So, the next time you fail, remind yourself that this is not a mark of defeat. It is a certificate of courage, a stamp of proof that you dared to try when many others did not. Failure is not something to run from. It is something to embrace. 16 hours and God. Because it means you are in the game, you are on the field, and you are moving forward. Human beings naturally seek comfort. We like safety, certainty, and predictability. And God. There is nothing wrong with enjoying comfort. But the problem begins when comfort becomes a cage. If we live our entire lives avoiding risk, avoiding mistakes, and avoiding the possibility of failure, we may remain safe, but we will never truly grow. Growth only happens when we step outside our comfort zone, and stepping outside always carries the risk of falling. That is why avoiding failure completely is not a sign of strength. It is a decision to stay stagnant. Think of a seed buried in the soil. If that seed refuses to break open, it will never face the danger of being crushed by wind or rain. It will remain safe underground, but it will never grow into a tree. Similarly, when we choose to avoid failure, we protect ourselves from disappointment, but we also rob ourselves the chance to become more than what we are today. Growth requires discomfort. It requires the courage to risk falling. Ours and God, because only then do we discover our hidden potential. Most of the great breakthroughs in life happen just beyond the edge of our comfort zone. A student who avoids speaking in public because of the fear of embarrassment may never fail in front of a crowd, but they also never discover their voice. An aspiring athlete who avoids competition because of the fear of losing may never taste defeat, but they also never experience victory. A person who never risks love may never feel heartbreak, ours and God, but they also never experience the beauty of connection. Every time we choose safety over risk, we also choose limitation over expansion. The comfort zone is like a soft bed. It feels good for a while, but if you lie there too long, you stop moving, and when you stop moving, you lose your strength. Life is dynamic. It pushes us forward, challenges us, and asks us to grow. If we refuse that call, we may remain comfortable, but deep inside, we will also feel unfulfilled. That's why so many people look back on their lives with regret, not because of the failures they experienced, but because of the chances they never took. Failure, as painful as it may be, shakes us awake. It forces us to think differently, to develop new skills, and to grow stronger. Comfort, on the other hand, God, lulls us into repeating the same patterns until life becomes monotonous. That is why failure is far more valuable than permanent comfort. A single failure teaches us more than years of staying safe ever can. Growth always comes with uncertainty, God, and uncertainty always carries the possibility of failure. But the opposite is also true, and God. Uncertainty also carries the possibility of success. When we step outside the comfort zone, we open the door not only to challenges, but also to opportunities. If we focus only on the fear of failure, we miss the fact that success, transformation, and fulfillment all live in the same space where failure exists. So, avoiding failure completely may give us temporary relief, but in the long run, it leaves us stuck 16 hours in God. True growth begins when we accept that failure is not something to fear, but something to embrace. By stepping out of comfort, even at the risk of falling, we give ourselves the chance to rise higher than we ever thought possible. When success comes to us, it is a moment of joy, a moment of pride, and naturally, we want to celebrate. We feel good about ourselves, and the world often applauds us too. Success is sweet, but it can sometimes be deceptive. It can make us relax, and God, it can make us complacent. And it can even give us the illusion that we have figured everything out. While success gives us joy, it rarely pushes us to dig deeper. Failure, on the other hand, has a very different impact. It may not give us celebration, but it gives us something far more valuable: reflection and wisdom. Think about it carefully. When was the last time you really analyzed your actions after a big success? Most likely, and God, you didn't, because success convinces us that what we did was right. We feel no urgency to question ourselves, no need to challenge our methods. Success makes us dance, but failure makes us think. After a failure, we pause. We replay the events in our minds. We ask difficult questions and we begin to see things that were invisible to us before. In that uncomfortable silence after failure, growth begins. Reflection is the gift failure gives us. It acts like a mirror, showing us our weaknesses, our blind spots, and our areas for improvement. Without failure, we may never see those things. Trusted God, a student who scores perfect marks in an exam rarely questions his study methods. But the one who struggles with mistakes is forced to reflect, forced to rethink, and forced to improve. Similarly, an athlete who always wins may not train harder, and God, but the one who loses feels the sting of defeat and is motivated to sharpen every detail. Failure is a master teacher because it forces us into self-awareness. And from reflection comes wisdom. Wisdom is not built from constant success. It is built from trial and error. The most experienced leaders, thinkers, and innovators carry wisdom not because they always succeeded 16 hours in God, but because they failed enough times to understand what doesn't work. Each failure added a layer of depth. Each mistake expanded their vision, God. And each setback gave them lessons that success alone could not provide. Wisdom is the ability to make better choices in the future, and that ability often comes from the pain of wrong choices in the past. It is true that failure hurts. Nobody likes to stumble, nobody enjoys rejection, and nobody celebrates defeat. But hidden beneath that pain is a treasure chest of lessons. Failure whispers truths that success often hides. It tells us where we went wrong. It highlights what we ignored, and it teaches us humility. And once we extract that wisdom and God, we are no longer the same person who failed. We come back stronger, clearer, and better prepared for the next challenge. Success may give us a reason to smile, but failure gives us a reason to grow. Success adds to our happiness, but failure adds to our character. Success may fill our pockets, but failure fills our minds with wisdom. Both are important and God. But when it comes to shaping who we are, failure often does more for us than success ever can. Every failure carries a lesson within it. The problem is, most of us focus so much on the pain of failing that we miss the wisdom it is trying to give us. When for 16 hours in God, when something doesn't go our way, instead of asking, why me? We should be asking, what is this teaching me? Because failure is not a wall blocking us, it is a teacher guiding us. It tells us what needs to change, what we must improve, and how we can do better next time. Without failure, we would keep walking blindly, repeating the same mistakes over and over again. But with failure, we are forced to refine, rethink, and reimagine our approach. Think of a scientist running experiments. Rarely does the first attempt succeed. Most experiments end in unexpected results or complete failure. But instead of giving up, the scientist carefully studies the outcome, makes adjustments, and tries again. Each failed experiment provides information. What combination doesn't work? What needs to be altered? And where the process can be improved. In this way, Every failure becomes a guide. Without it, there would be no progress in science, no breakthroughs, no discoveries. The same principle applies to life. Each time we fail, we receive data. That data is not meant to discourage us. It is meant to refine our strategy. Consider an entrepreneur who launches a business that doesn't succeed. The immediate reaction might be disappointment or embarrassment. But if they truly reflect the 16 hours on God, they may realize the failure taught them valuable lessons about customer needs, financial planning, or marketing approaches. That failed business might look like an ending from the outside, but in reality, it is a training ground. And God, the wisdom gained there can lay the foundation for a far more successful venture in the future. Many of the world's greatest biz leaders didn't succeed because they avoided failure. They succeeded because they learned from it. Failure has a unique way of sharpening our focus. When everything goes right, we don't pay attention to the small details. But when things go wrong, we start noticing what we missed. Maybe we lacked discipline and God. Maybe our communication wasn't clear, or maybe our strategy was weak. Failure points these things out with absolute clarity. It doesn't flatter us. It doesn't sugarcoat. It shows us reality as it is. And when we are humble enough to listen, God, failure becomes the most honest and effective teacher we could ever have. But there is a condition. To learn from failure, we must drop our ego. Many people repeat the same mistakes, not because life doesn't teach them God, but because they refuse to listen. They see failure as humiliation instead of education. They get stuck in blame instead of growth. If we approach failure with humility, however, we gain wisdom. We begin to asking, what can I do differently? How can I improve? Where must I refine my actions? These questions turn every setback into a stepping stone. So, every failure is not the end of the road. It is a redirection, a signpost pointing us toward a better path. If we are willing to learn, every stumble is a classroom, every mistake is a lesson, and every loss is preparing us for a greater win, ours and God. Life is not about how many times we fall, it is about how many times we rise after falling. Each setback we face, each disappointment we endure is an invitation to build resilience. Resilience is not something we are born with. It is something life trains us in, one challenge at a time. The more we fall and stand back up, the stronger we become. Persistence is not developed when everything is smooth. It is developed when we are tested, when nothing seems to work, and yet we keep going. Imagine a tree during a storm. The strong beam winds bend its branches, and the heavy rains test its roots. At that moment, it may look as though the tree will break. But when the storm passes, the tree that stood firm comes out stronger, its roots deeper, its trunk more resilient. In the same way, every setback we face in life is like a storm. It shakes us, it bends us, but if we refuse to give up, it leaves us stronger than before. Resilience is not built in comfort. It is built in the storms of failure. Every time we fail, we are faced with two choices: to give up or to rise again. And each time we choose to rise, we add another layer of strength to our character. That strength accumulates over time, shaping us into individuals who can withstand even greater challenges. People who seem unshakable are not those who never face difficulties. God, they are the ones who fell countless times but refused to stay down. Their resilience was forged in the fire of setbacks. Persistence is another gift failure gives us. Success often takes longer than we expect. The journey is rarely straight. It is full of twists, turns, and obstacles. Without persistence, many dreams die halfway. And God. But failure teaches us persistence. It forces us to continue trying even when things don't go our way. Every failed attempt tests our commitment. Do we really want this dream? Or are we only chasing it because it looks easy? Those who persist through repeated failures prove their dedication, and eventually, persistence opens the doors that talent and luck alone cannot. Think of inventors, athletes, or artists who are admired for their achievements. Their greatness does lie only in their talent, but in their persistence through failure. The athlete who loses again and again but keeps training. The writer whose work gets rejected but continues writing. The dreamer whose ideas collapse keeps innovating. All of them embody the spirit of persistence. 16 hours in God. Without their setbacks, they would not have discovered the depth of their resilience. Failure, then, is like a weight in the gym of life. At first, it feels heavy, uncomfortable, and painful. But just as lifting weights builds muscle, lifting ourselves after failure builds resilience. The more we face difficulties, the more we develop the strength to keep moving forward, no matter how tough the journey gets. Resilience and persistence are not built in one moment. 16 hours in God built over time with every rise after every fall. So instead of fearing setbacks, hours in God, we should see them as opportunities to train ourselves. Each failure is life's way of saying, stand up stronger this time. And every time we do, we move closer to becoming unshakable, unstoppable, and fully prepared for the success that awaits us. 16 hours in God. When we admire the lives of great achievers, we often see only the shining peak of their success. We see the medals, the awards, the recognition, and the glory for 20 hours in God. But what we don't always see are the countless failures that came before those victories. Behind every great success story lies a trail of disappointments, setbacks, and defeats that shape the journey. What makes these achievers truly remarkable is not that they avoided failure, but that they transformed it into a stepping stone toward their ultimate success. Take the story of Thomas Edison, who is celebrated for inventing the light bulb, and God. History tells us that he failed thousands of times before finding the right filament that worked. For most people, even 10 failures would have been enough to give up. But Edison saw each failed attempt not as a defeat, but as progress. He famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Each failure was a stepping stone, narrowing down the path until success became inevitable and God. His achievement was not the light bulb alone. It was the persistence to turn failure into fuel. The same is true in the world of sports. Michael Jordan, considered one of the greatest basketball players of all time, openly admitted that he missed more than 9,000 shots in his career, lost almost 300 games, and on 26 occasions, he was trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. Yet he explained, God. It was exactly those failures that made him succeed. Each missed shot was a lesson. Each defeat was a stepping stone. And without them, the victories that inspired millions would never have happened. Even in literature, we see this pattern. J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series, was rejected by multiple publishers before her book finally got accepted. Today, her stories are loved across the globe, 16 Hours and God. But it was her willingness to face rejection after rejection that brought her to that success. Had she given after the first or second rejection, the world would never have known the magic of her imagination. These examples remind us that failure is not the opposite of achievement. It is the path to achievement. Every great figure we admire was once an ordinary person facing repeated failures. What made them extraordinary was their decision not to stop at those failures. Instead, they climbed on them one by one until they reached the heights of greatness. What separates achievers from quitters is not luck and God talent or even opportunity. It is the mindset with which they view failure. Quitters see failure as the end, but achievers see it as a stepping stone. To them, every setback is not a wall, but a step, pushing them higher and closer to their dreams. And God. The more they fail, the more they learn, and the more they learn, the closer they get to success. If we wish to follow in the footsteps of these achievers, we must stop fearing failure. We must see it for what it really is, a tool, a teacher, and a stepping stone. Every time we stumble, we are not moving backward, and God. We are building the foundation for something greater. And just like the achievers we admire, God, we too can turn our failures into the very stones that will lift us toward remarkable success. Most of us are taught to resist failure, to hide it, or even to fear it. We see it as an enemy, ours and God, as something that robs us of confidence and happiness. But what if we change the way we look at failure? What if, instead of seeing it as a curse, we embraced it with gratitude? Gratitude has the power to transform even the most painful experiences into sources of strength. When we thank failure for its lessons, we stop 16 hours and God. We stop seeing it as an obstacle and begin to see it as fuel that propels us forward. Gratitude does not mean we enjoy the pain of failing. It means we recognize the value hidden inside the experience. A farmer does not enjoy storms destroying his crops. But he understands that storms bring rains, and rains make the soil fertile. Similarly, failure may shake us, God, but it enriches us with lessons we could never have learned otherwise. When we look back at our past failures with gratitude, we often realize that they were preparing us for something greater, something we could not see at the time. Think of every failure as a teacher disguised in harsh clothing. It may not arrive with gentle words or soft encouragement, but it arrives with powerful lessons. Gratitude helps us receive those lessons instead of rejecting them. A failed exam teaches us to study better. A failed business teaches how to manage resources more wisely. A failed relationship teaches about communication, respect, and compatibility. If we carry bitterness toward failure, we miss these lessons. But if we carry gratitude, we gain the wisdom that turns failure into growth. Gratitude also shifts our mindset. Without gratitude, failure feels heavy, like a burden we must drag with us. But with gratitude, failure feels lighter because we begin to see its purpose. We no longer ask, why did this happen to me? But instead ask, what is this teaching me? That small change in perspective is what transforms failure into fuel. When we see value in our struggles, we become stronger, more determined, and more focused on the journey ahead. Some of the most resilient people in the world are not those who avoided failure, but those who embraced it. They are grateful for the struggles because each one made them wiser and tougher. Their gratitude turned pain into power. When others gave up, they pressed forward with renewed strength and God, fueled by the very failures that once tried to stop them. Gratitude became their secret weapon, transforming setbacks into stepping stones. Even in our daily lives, we can apply this. The small failures, losing an opportunity, making a mistake at work, struggling with a personal goal, can either discourage us or strengthen us, depending on how we choose to respond. If we meet them with anger or despair, we remain stuck. But if we meet them with gratitude, saying, this is shaping me into a better version of myself, we turn them into growth. That mindset just helps us in the short term. It prepares us for long-term success because a grateful heart is unshakable in the face of failure. When we embrace failure with gratitude, we no longer see it as an enemy. We see it as fuel. It drives us to grow, to rise stronger, and to achieve more than we ever thought possible. A gratitude transforms failure from something we fear into something we welcome, because we know that within every failure lies the seed of our future success.